Aaron, callous, watched the dull, amber sun sink below the rocky horizon of Terrell 6 and exhaled a slow, resigned breath. He had never imagined this dry, desolate planet as a place to settle, but circumstances and a yearning to leave his old life had guided him here. Miles of cracked earth stretched out in every direction, forming an almost endless desert. A perpetual wind kicked up dust that clung to his boots and stung his cheeks. He pulled his scarf tighter around his face, finding a grim sort of comfort in its coarse texture. At least he was alone. Aloneness was all he wanted anymore, a stark contrast to the chaos he had once embraced. Then again, being alone except for Mark, the meddlesome droid, was still better than hearing gunfire or feeling hot breath on the back of his neck in some war-torn labyrinth. His companion, a compact, rust-streaked droid that called itself Mark, trudged through the sand with a surprisingly jaunty gait. Mark's short stature barely reached Aaron's chest, and its limbs had been patched together from various scrap heaps across the galaxy. Yet it never seemed to lose its sense of mischief. Mark was humming a tune in its tinny, artificial voice, a habit that both amused and irritated Aaron. He sometimes wondered if the droid purposely tried to get on his nerves, just to spark conversation. Aaron paused near a craggy outcrop and gazed up at the sky. The notion of finding peace in this place felt almost laughable. Terrell 6 had once been the site of a vicious military conflict, leaving behind wreckage and a scorched crust. Residents who survived the aftermath either fled or eked out a living by scavenging old battlegrounds. Yet for some reason, rumors circulated that a mysterious black tree had persisted here for centuries. Some said millennia, long before the wars ever began. Locals whispered that it was older than civilization itself. Aaron normally disregarded myths. After all, he had spent too long in the harsh reality of war to let superstition sway him. But the way they spoke about this tree, as though it were alive in a way no normal plant could be, piqued his interest. "Boss," Mark piped up in its cheerful monotone, "do you see that formation over there? Looks like half a mountain collapsed in on itself." Aaron lifted a hand to shade his eyes from the last rays of sunlight and squinted. In the distance, a jagged silhouette jutted from the earth like a broken tooth. He nodded. "That might be the place," he said quietly. Then he let a hint of wry amusement color his voice. "You ready for more dusty rock?" "Absolutely. I just can't get enough of tripping over debris in the dark," Mark replied, feigning excitement with a mechanical whir. "But I can't wait to see your face if we actually find what we came for." Aaron took another step forward, the ground crunching beneath his boots. He still wasn't sure what he'd come for. Maybe to learn if the rumors meant anything at all. If there was truly a remarkable tree fused into the planet's crust, or if it was just another dead trunk with a bit of local legend wrapped around it. He tried to pretend it was mere curiosity, but in truth, he suspected a deeper reason. Part of him wanted to believe in something strange or wondrous. After decades of bullets, blood, and unmarked graves, a small glimmer of wonder felt necessary. Eventually, they crested a rise. Below them in a shallow crater stood the remnants of a structure that looked half natural, half artificially hewn from the rock. Broken pillars lay scattered, each one etched with symbols that time had worn down. The center of this ruin featured an enormous trunk, or rather, something that had once been a trunk, but was now encased in ridges of black, glossy bark that reflected the twilight in shifting patterns. Aaron felt his heart give a small thump. From here, the trunk appeared lifeless, resembling a hardened shell. But that shell gleamed in a way that ordinary wood did not. The air around it felt oddly still. He heard no insects, felt no breeze, just a pervasive silence, like the hush before an impending storm. "Creepy," Mark said, stepping carefully over a chunk of carved stone. According to the local data logs, folks who wandered close to this place either went missing or came back terrified. Some claimed the tree whispered. Aaron snorted softly. Trees don't whisper, and if it did, I doubt it'd have anything nice to say. He slid down into the crater, boots slipping a bit on the loose rubble. As he drew closer, He noticed veins of faint green coursing through the dark bark. They pulsed as though they had captured the fading light of day. Curiosity guided him forward more than caution. Mark called out, "Boss, I'm reading some mild energy fluctuations. Could be geological in origin or not. Maybe we do this carefully, yeah?" But Aaron's mind was already turning. He pressed a palm to the bark, half expecting it to feel hot. Instead, it was cool, as though the swirling patterns were purely surface illusions. For an instant, his breath caught. He thought he sensed something shift under his hand, a gentle tremor that ran through the trunk. Then he yanked his hand away in reflex. "I told you, be careful," Mark admonished, stepping up beside him. No telling what's. A low, resonant sound trembled through the ground. Aaron's eyes widened. The bark cracked open a sliver, revealing a soft glow. As if in slow motion, a spider web of fractures spread across the trunk. Some invisible force pushed from within, releasing shards of that hardened exterior. Each shard clattered to the ground and dissolved into dust. Aaron found himself taking a step back, raising an arm as a swirl of glowing motes rushed upward. He coughed when the dust tickled his nose. Mark let out a metallic yelp, fumbling for a scanning tool. Then the trunk split open entirely, revealing a slender figure bound within. Her emerald skin glistened with an otherworldly sheen, as though her very flesh held flecks of starlight. She slumped forward, hair, a deep black merging into green tips, tumbling over her face. Instinct took over. Aaron lunged to catch her, ignoring the adrenaline spike that urged him to back away. He caught her in his arms and sank to one knee. Her body was impossibly light, yet she felt solid, warm to the touch. She let out a small gasp as her eyes fluttered. They were the color of polished gold. She took a ragged breath, and then those golden eyes focused on him with an intensity that made him shiver. "Weak!" She reached up and touched his cheek. "You," she said in a tremulous voice. "You woke me." Aaron didn't know how to respond. He didn't quite trust his own voice. The droid's head swiveled in comedic confusion. "I guess we found a rumor," Mark whispered, the entire scene making even the sardonic robot uncertain how to proceed. Slowly, the woman eased herself into a standing position, leaning on Aaron for support. She wore an odd garment that seemed more like living leaves and vines than cloth, a fragile covering that clung to her figure. She glanced around at the crater, the pillars, and the broken bark, as if seeing the world for the first time in eons. "This place," she murmured. "It's all different." Aaron rose and steadied her by the arm. "Miss, you need help," he said gently, though he had no idea how to help a person who just burst from a tree. "Can you walk?" She nodded, though her knees wobbled. "Yes," she managed, "but the air feels heavy." He exchanged a quick look with Mark, who beeped in scanning mode. "Her vital signs are unusual," the droid reported. "She's definitely not human, boss. Some type of, well, I'm not sure." The woman's eyes flicked to the droid. She seemed only mildly surprised. "A mechanical companion," she noted, her voice regaining some steadiness. "I've heard of such things, but I never witnessed them. At least not in my time." Aaron let out a long breath and attempted a calm smile. "My name is Aaron Callis," he said, clearing his throat. "This is Mark. We travelers. We heard rumors about this tree, and, well, here we are." "Mark stands for Multipurpose Adaptive Repair Construct," the droid chirped. "Though I doubt you care right now, considering you just fell out of that trunk." The woman tilted her head. "I am Soraya," she said, as if searching her memory to be certain. "Soraya of the... I can't remember." She frowned. "I was sealed here for so long. The centuries blurred." Aaron and Mark helped her move away from the swirling dust and jagged root systems. A faint luminescence lingered around the trunk, then flickered out. Soraya's face contorted in momentary pain, as though the separation from the bark tore at something inside her. Yet she took another step, inhaling the gritty air. They didn't get far before a voice cut through the stillness, echoing from the rim of the crater. Well, a man drawled. "Looks like we found ourselves a nice prize." Didn't expect competition. Aaron glanced up sharply. A group of 6 rough-looking individuals, each brandishing rifles or energy lances, peered down at them. Their faces bore the arrogant smirk of opportunists. Low-life scavengers, mercenaries, tomb raiders. Aaron had encountered their type on countless worlds. He tensed, one hand drifting toward the pistol at his waist. Competing for what? Aaron called back, hoping to keep them talking. He didn't like the glint in their eyes when they spotted Soraya. For her, the leader said, nodding toward the emerald-skinned woman. People say there's something real special about that trunk. Word traveled. We're here to grab whatever power's in it. His lips curled. Looks like you already unwrapped it. Mark rolled its mechanical eyes, if that were possible. Boss, these guys do not look like they plan on discussing politics. Soraya stepped forward, eyes still uncertain. I do not wish violence, she said softly, though her voice carried a surprising firmness. I'm still adjusting. The leader laughed. Violence might not be your choice, lady, but it's ours. Hand yourself over nice and easy, or this ends badly. Aaron felt his pulse quicken. He tried so hard to avoid conflicts like this. He had sworn to leave the mercenary life behind, but there was no chance he would abandon Soraya or let these vultures take her. With a resigned sigh, he drew his gun. Mark, be ready. Already warming up, the droid chirped, making a small humming noise as it activated a personal shield. The standoff held for a few tense seconds. Then one of the raiders fired a warning shot into the sky. Aaron responded by dropping behind a chunk of rubble, pulling Soraya with him. The air filled with the crack of gunfire and the electric sizzle of energy weapons. Mark darted behind a half-buried column, returning fire with carefully calibrated blasts. Sparks ricocheted off the broken stone. Aaron risked a glance at Soraya. She crouched with her hands pressed to the ground, eyes squeezed shut. He was about to ask if she was hurt when he noticed the soil around her fingers shifting. Thin roots emerged, inch by inch, and began to slither across the ground. His heart pounded. He'd never seen anything like it. The roots traveled with shocking speed, weaving toward the raiders, who were too busy firing at Mark to notice. Suddenly, the mercenary on the far right let out a shriek as a root wrapped around his ankle, yanking him off his feet. Another man turned in alarm, only to have a second coil trip him. The leader roared, "What's going on?" And he slashed at the ground with his machete. The roots recoiled slightly, but soon redoubled their efforts, entangling limbs and weapons. Aaron found his own mouth open in disbelief. Soraya was breathing hard, sweat beading on her forehead. She seemed uncertain, as if she didn't fully control what she was doing. Nonetheless, the results were undeniable. The raiders cursed and tried to free themselves. Mark took advantage of their distraction, unleashing a few precise blasts that sent them scrambling for cover. In a matter of moments, the raiders' confidence eroded. They realized the advantage was lost. Two managed to escape the creeping vines and sprinted away, leaving the rest cursing or tangled on the ground. The leader turned to run as well, hobbling. He shot Aaron a murderous glare before disappearing over the crater's rim. When it was over, Soraya collapsed to one knee. The roots slipped back into the dry earth, leaving behind shallow furrows. She looked drained, uncertain, as though she'd just done something she couldn't fully explain. Aaron holstered his gun, kneeling beside her. Are you all right? She shook her head, forcing a small, shaky breath. I didn't mean to harm them. I only wanted to stop their attack. It's been so long since I channeled the lifeblood of the land. I'm not stable. Boss, Mark said, waddling closer. I'm reading unusual fluctuations in her bioenergy. Might be wise to get her somewhere safer, so she can rest. Odds are those punks will be back with more men soon. Aaron couldn't deny the logic. Right, he said quietly. He slipped an arm under Soraya's shoulders, helping her stand. There's a small settlement a few hours east from here, if the map is right. We'll see about some supplies, maybe find out more about who you are. Soraya turned her golden gaze on him. Thank you. I fear that I carry a great power inside me, something that was never meant to run loose. Aaron kept his expression grim, but calm. Well, let's see if we can figure out how to keep it from running wild. They left the crater behind, the once imposing black trunk, now a ruined husk. The sky deepened into night, stars flickering overhead. As they walked, Aaron felt a strange mix of fear and curiosity tug at him. Soraya had awakened from a millennia-long slumber, evidently bonded to that tree. Whatever destiny she carried, it was bigger than any of them realized. And though Aaron had fled from conflict, it seemed conflict had found him again. Only this time, the stakes felt even higher. He glanced at her from the corner of his eye. She was regal in a quiet way, her emerald skin catching the starlight, her hair rippling in the breeze that had stirred once more. The idea of traveling alongside someone so extraordinary would have stunned him a few years back. Yet now, all he could think about was how to keep both her and himself alive in a galaxy that preyed on anything powerful or unique. They trudged onward until the horizon lightened with the faint glow of a meager settlement. The silhouettes of small buildings, constructed from scrap metal and half-buried shipping containers, rose ahead. This outpost, known as Hollow Bend, was home to a few dozen souls who refused to leave Terral 6. They collected salvage, sold it to passing traders, and kept mostly to themselves. Aaron was counting on them to provide some measure of rest and resources before the next wave of trouble arrived. At the outskirts, a weary guard stepped forward and lifted a flashlight. "Who goes there?" he asked, eyes narrowing at the sight of Soraya's shimmering skin. "We don't want any trouble." Aaron held up his free hand in a gesture of peace. "We're just travelers. She's injured. We need a place to stay for a short while." The guard hesitated, but eventually nodded. "I'm Martin. You can stay in the old prefab unit on the left. It's not luxurious, but it's got a roof." They thanked him and continued into the settlement. Rusted walkways and flickering lanterns gave the place a gloomy look, but it felt safe enough, at least for now. A few curious faces peered from doorways, frowning at the unusual trio. Soraya drew the most stares, but she kept her head down, too weary to be self-conscious. Inside the prefab unit, they found a rickety cot, a crate that served as a table, and a single dim lamp. Soraya lowered herself onto the cot. Aaron leaned against the wall, crossing his arms. "Get some rest," he suggested. "We'll figure things out tomorrow." Mark poked around, rummaging through debris. "I'll see if I can scrounge up any old data logs or texts. Maybe someone around here has info on that tree, or on the firstborn, if that's even real." Soraya closed her eyes. "It is real," she murmured. "So real that wars were fought over it. Alliances shattered, countless died because the power was too great. My people locked me away, locked us all away." "Us," Aaron echoed, stepping closer. But she had already drifted off into an uneasy sleep. He sighed. Millennia. She must have memories older than entire civilizations, and yet she looked so young. The droid left to investigate the settlement's meager data caches, leaving Aaron alone with Soraya's slumber. He studied her from a short distance, noticing how the faint lines of glowing green traced across her arms, pulsing in tandem with her slow breathing. Something about it fascinated him. He thought back to how the Earth itself had answered her call. That was power beyond any weapon he'd seen in his mercenary days. And if she was just regaining it, who knew what she could do at full strength? He felt a flicker of concern. Was she truly lost control someday? Could he or anyone stop her? With a low grunt, he leaned his head against the prefab wall. He would find no easy answers tonight. If trouble came, he just had to be ready. While Soraya slept, Mark eventually returned with a couple of batter tablets and a triumphant beep. "Got something." Local gossip, old cargo manifests, but more importantly, some references to a legend about a set of living vessels locked away eons ago. Aaron rubbed the fatigue from his eyes. Living vessels, as in people used as containers? That's the gist, Mark agreed, placing the data tablets carefully on the crate. Some talk about the firstborn as a species that possessed mastery over nature's energies. They apparently sealed fragments of that power in certain chosen individuals, or forced individuals, depends on the story, who were then bound to sites across the galaxy. Trees, stones, crystals, temples. You name it. Aaron exhaled, gaze drifting to Soraya. So she might be one of these vessels. That means the power in her was never fully her own, but something given or forced upon her. Before Mark could comment, Soraya stirred awake. She sat up slowly, rubbing her forehead. It was forced, she confirmed in a quiet tone. My people believed it was the only way to prevent an all-consuming war. They took volunteers at first, but then they conscripted the rest of us. We were locked away with the energy, so we couldn't destroy anything. Aaron's brows knit together in sympathy. So you've been trapped in that tree all this time, basically to keep your energy sealed? She nodded, swallowing a lump in her throat. Yes, and until you touched the seal, I remained dormant. I'm sure if you hadn't come, I would have slept forever. Perhaps that would have been best. He shook his head. You can't honestly believe that, he said softly. And we're here now, so there's no going back. They fell silent until the door slid open and Martin peered in. There's someone here to see you, he mumbled. Says he's a merchant, but he's armed. Usually doesn't cause trouble. Name's Rennick. Thought you might want to talk to him if you're looking for supplies. Aaron shared a look with Mark. All right, send him in. Rennick turned out to be a lanky, sharp-faced man with a well-worn jacket and a grin that suggested he had survived too many close calls to fret about caution. He took one glance at Soraya and raised his eyebrows. So the rumors are true. People say a green-skinned lady emerged from that black trunk, and that she's got some weird powers. Aaron tensed. Is that going to be a problem? Rennick chuckled. Not for me, friend. But you bet there are others who'd pay handsomely to get their hands on her. Word travels fast, especially on a planet where folks are itching for a bounty or two. Soraya's gaze flickered with weariness, and Aaron gritted his teeth. When not for sale, Rennick lifted his hands in a placating gesture. I'm not looking to cause trouble. In fact, I might be your best shot at avoiding it for the moment. I have a small hover transport, can take you out of here to safer ground. But it'll cost you. Fuel is not cheap, and I run risks if I'm aiding a fugitive from whoever's after you. How much? Mark asked, shifting impatiently. Rennick named a sum that made Aaron curse under his breath. He had some credits stashed away from his old life, but that sum would wipe him nearly clean. Then again, staying put would invite the raiders to return with more men. Or worse, someone with better resources might come sniffing around to claim Soraya as a living weapon. Aaron glanced at her. She offered a small, resigned nod. If it helps, she whispered, we should go. Isensa unrast. Something stirs in the planet's crust, and I suspect it's linked to my awakening. Reluctantly, Aaron agreed to Rennick's terms. Within hours, they had loaded minimal supplies onto a rattling hover transport. Soraya sat in the back, flanked by crates. She gazed out at the passing desert through half-lidded eyes, as though she were trying to commune with the land. Mark perched on top of a crate, rummaging through random contraptions, always searching for ways to augment its repertoire. Rennick steered the transport, while Aaron sat watchfully beside him. They made small talk, but Aaron's mind kept wandering to Soraya. Every so often, the vehicle hit a bump, and he would look back to see if she was all right. She'd offer a gentle, reassuring smile, though her posture was tense. Whatever raw energy she'd once held, it was still in flux. She might appear calm, but he could tell it cost her tremendous effort to hold that power in check. A beep from Mark broke the silence. Boss, I've caught a faint signal on the wideband frequency. Could be from that group who attacked us. Possibly other bounty hunters, or some bigger fish. The droid paused. They're scanning the area for unusual energy readings. Probably looking for Soraya. Rennick grimaced. I'll take a detour through the canyons. We might lose them in the ridges if we're lucky. The path is rough, though. As they veered off the main route, the terrain became jagged and full of sharp inclines. Twice, the hover transport nearly tipped on its side, causing Aaron to grip the edge and hiss curses under his breath. Soraya clung to the back, eyes fluttering as she fought off waves of dizziness. Suddenly, a figure appeared at the top of a rocky ledge, clad in dusty armor and aiming a rifle at them. Rennick slammed the controls and swerved. A shot rang out, missing them by inches. Next, two more men emerged from behind a boulder, their rifles trained on the transport. Aaron's chest tightened. "Ambush!" he shouted. Mark zipped to the side, raising a small pulse turret it had installed in its forearm, returning fire. Sparks flew, and the transport lurched. Soraya nearly fell over the side, letting out a startled cry. Without thinking, Aaron launched himself toward her, grabbing her arm and holding her in place. The transport slowed as Rennick tried to maneuver around the ambush. More gunshots echoed in the canyon. "Tell me this was included in your fee," Aaron snarled at Rennick, who swore under his breath and tried to accelerate. The rocky terrain hindered any chance at a smooth escape. The men in armor advanced, forcing them into a corner. Aaron spotted an insignia on one of their shoulders, a stylized helm. Recognition flared in his mind. "These are Helmian's men," he muttered. "Lord Helmion, that arms dealer and war profiteer. He must have heard rumors about Soraya. Damn it. Lord Helmian's hire guns?" "Yes," Rennick confirmed. "I've had a few run-ins with them. Not pretty." The transport shook as a fresh blast impacted its side. Mark squeaked, "Boss, I can't hold them off alone with my pop gun. We might have to bail." Aaron pulled Soraya close, brow furrowed. "If you can do that root trick again." She exhaled sharply. "I can try, but I fear losing control in this narrow canyon. It's unstable. The ground could." A bullet ricocheted off the vehicle's frame, reminding them that they had no time to strategize. "Then do what you can," Aaron urged. Soraya closed her eyes, pressed a palm to the floor of the transport. A faint green glow pulsed around her hand, and a low rumble vibrated through the stone beneath them. Suddenly, thick vines, covered in thorns, erupted from cracks in the canyon wall, snaking toward the nearest gunman. One man cried out as the vine wrapped around his torso, dragging him backward. But the motion shook loose a portion of the cliff face. Rocks tumbled down in a mini landslide, threatening to bury all of them. Aaron shouted a warning. Rennick jerked the controls in a desperate bid to avoid the cascading boulders. The transport jostled and nearly flipped. Stones hammered its hull. One particularly large rock slammed the back corner, throwing Soraya off balance. She let out a soft gasp of pain. Meanwhile, two more gunmen tried to press the advantage, training their rifles on them. Mark fired a precision bolt that sent one gunman sprawling. The other dived behind cover. "We're not going to keep outrunning them," the droid snapped. "We need a plan that doesn't involve burying ourselves alive." Aaron grimaced. "Rennick, drive forward. Straight down this path, if it's clear." "It's not exactly clear," Rennick retorted. "But I see a possible route." They lurched ahead, while the vines behind them flailed wildly, tangling some of Helmian's men. Dust choked the air. At last, they burst from the canyon's tightest pass into a wider valley. Rennick floored it, pushing the transport to its limit. The thrum of the engine rose in a high-pitched whine. By the time they left the canyon behind, the ambushers were nowhere to be seen, likely pinned by the havoc Soraya had unleashed. She slumped, chest heaving, sweat dripping from her temples. "I'm sorry," she managed between breaths. "I can't keep doing this. The more I draw on the planet's energy, the more it fights back." Aaron knelt beside her, wiping a smudge of dust from her cheek. "It's okay. You kept us alive. We'll find a safer spot. Then we can figure out how to stop Helmian's men from tracking you." Rennick frowned. "Where do you plan to go exactly? Because if we continue far enough east, we'll reach the abandoned temple fields, rumored to be haunted or cursed or whatever. My guess, leftover relics from the same ancient civilization that made that black trunk. That could be a lead, or it could be suicide." Aaron looked at Soraya, who closed her eyes as though listening to something only she could hear. After a moment, she nodded. "Something calls. There's a place where the old knowledge remains, a place that might help me remember. If that's the temple fields, then so be it." "Of course," Mark grumbled. "Why do we always run to the creepiest location possible?" No one had an answer for that, so they pressed on into the night. They arrived in the temple fields at dawn. Jagged stones jutted from the earth in irregular patterns, each stone engraved with faded scripts that defied immediate comprehension. Massive archways, now collapsed, suggested that this had once been a grand structure, possibly a hub for worship or study. Dust devils whirled across the barren ground. The transport sputtered to a halt. Rennick inspected the engine with a frustrated sigh. This thing's not going another mile unless I do major repairs. We're stuck here for now. Mark hopped down. I can assist, but I need parts. Let me rummage. Aaron helped Soraya step on a firmer ground. She drew in a sharp breath, staring at the remnants of ancient statues carved in dark stone. Some stood half-buried, others toppled. A sense of forlorn majesty lingered, like an echo of a long-forgotten era. Aaron gently touched her shoulder. What is this place exactly? She ran her fingers over a broken pillar, her eyes distant. My memory is fragmented, but I sense that my people built enclaves like this across different worlds. They stored knowledge about controlling the energy we carried, if the chosen vessel ever awakened. That might be me or others like me. Aaron thought of the earlier mention of multiple vessels. You said you were sealed so that you couldn't destroy anything. Were there many others? Soraya shivered. Scores of them, perhaps hundreds. Each vessel contained an aspect of the Firstborn's power. They hoped dividing it among many bodies would lessen the chance of cataclysmic war. But that also meant if any vessel lost control, their portion of energy could still wreak havoc on a planetary scale. She walked deeper into the ruins, her bare feet silent on the dusty stones. Aaron stayed close, scanning the shadows for potential threats. Every so often, a piece of rubble dislodged and rolled away, making him jump. Mark tinkered around the transport, while Rennick occasionally cast suspicious glances at Soraya, as though re-evaluating the risk she posed. At the far side of the field, partially hidden behind a collapsed wall, they found a series of inscriptions carved in an ancient language. Soft green lines glowed in the grooves, reminiscent of the patterns on Soraya's skin. She brushed her fingertips across them. The glow intensified slightly. Then, words, written in a language Aaron couldn't read, began rearranging into a more familiar script, likely some form of advanced transliteration. He stared in astonishment. One phrase stood out. The vessel must unite with a counterbalance to hold the torrent at bay. Soraya read it aloud, voice shaking. A counterbalance, perhaps that someone or something meant to stand against the destructive surge. She turned to Aaron, her gaze troubled. The tree that bound me was one method, but it proved only a temporary seal. If I continue to awaken, my portion of energy could spike without warning. Aaron tried to process that. Are you saying you need another living being who can offset that energy? She nodded slowly. Yes. In some cases, the best solution is a partner who can share the burden. But not just anyone can withstand the currents of the power I carry. A strange feeling coursed through Aaron, reminiscent of the spark he felt when he first touched the black trunk. The memory made him uneasy. He forced himself to stay composed. We can figure this out, he said, wanting to reassure her, though he wasn't entirely convinced himself. Maybe there's more here that can help. They combed through the ruins, discovering fragments of tablets that depicted vessels awakening, losing control, and leveling entire landscapes. Others told stories of certain individuals standing as anchors, preventing the vessels from going berserk. This system evidently saved multiple worlds from destruction in times past. Mark eventually wandered over, spattered with grease. Engines busted pretty bad. We need spare parts. Also, I found something interesting while scrounging. The droid revealed a battered device that hummed quietly. Some kind of ancient power stabilizer. Not sure how it works, but it might be relevant to, Soraya's predicament. Soraya took the device, her eyes reflecting its faint glow. She breathed out in a soft hush. Ikan sensaitalia. This device was designed to regulate the flow of the energy that the vessels carried. But it's incomplete. I need to channel it through someone or something to fully activate it. Aaron and Mark exchanged glances. Rennick, who had been silently observing, stepped back with a nervous laugh. I'm not volunteering. I like my organs where they are. Thanks. Soraya offered a small, apologetic smile. No one is forcing you. Aaron, you touched the tree and ended up awakening me. There's a chance that means you share a resonance with this power. Will you let me try to see if you can act as a partial anchor? Just enough to keep me stable while we figure out a better solution. Aaron's gut twisted, but he gave a slow nod. Part of him felt drawn to the notion, compelled to help her, even if it meant risking the power that had been sealed for millennia. All right, he said quietly. Show me what to do. They settled in a cleared section of the temple, away from precarious walls. Soraya instructed him to sit opposite her, knees almost touching. She placed the device between them. Mark and Rennick stood watch at a safe distance, with the droid muttering worried remarks about the potential meltdown. Soraya closed her eyes and began to hum softly. The lines on her skin glowed, reflecting patterns in the device. Aaron breathed steadily, focusing on her face. A sensation like a cool breeze rippled across his arms. Then a pulse of energy surged from the device, and he gasped as an electric jolt raced through him. It wasn't painful, exactly, more like an intense, almost invasive awareness of another presence. He could feel Soraya's heartbeat, as if it were echoing within his own chest. She inhaled sharply, a look of wonder crossing her features. Yes, you can sense it, she whispered. Now try to relax, to guide the energy as it moves. Don't fight it, or it'll lash out. Aaron tried to comply, but the raw current threatened to overwhelm him. Images flashed in his mind. Glimpses of ancient forests, roiling oceans, cities crumbling under green-tinted cataclysms. Shouts of unknown voices, a grand civilization fracturing. He clenched his teeth, wrestling to keep from panicking. Soraya's voice drifted into the chaos, soothing. Breathe with me. Let me share the weight. Slowly, the swirling storm in his head receded. The device's hum lowered to a gentle purr. His breathing steadied. Soraya opened her eyes, golden irises luminous. Their gazes locked, and for a moment, everything else vanished. The ruin, the hazards, even the reality that mercenaries were hunting them. There was just the two of them, bound by this strange interplay of cosmic force. Then the moment passed. The device dimmed, and Aaron slumped forward, sweat dripping from his brow. He felt shaky, but not hurt. Soraya looked more composed than before, as if a fraction of her burden had lifted. She placed a hand on his arm. Thank you, she murmured. I'm still not fully stable, but that helped immensely. Mark clanked over, scanning them both with a concerned beep. Vital signs are within acceptable ranges, it reported. No meltdown. Good job, boss. You didn't fry your brain, or hers, or blow up half the temple. Aaron offered a half smile, though a flood of questions churned in his mind. What did this anchoring mean long-term? Was he tied to Soraya now in a way that he couldn't undo? Before he could dwell on it, a warning shout from Rennick cut through the quiet. We got incoming. Across the broken courtyard, multiple armed figures emerged from the temple's perimeter. Each wore the unmistakable badge of Lord Helmian's forces. At their head stood a tall figure, half his face covered in gleaming metal plating. His eyes glowed red with embedded targeting sensors. He carried a specialized weapon that hummed with lethal energy. Soraya tensed, rising to her feet. Aaron forced himself to stand despite the lingering dizziness. Mark aimed at small turret. Rennick ducked behind a column. The tall figure's voice boomed across the courtyard. I am Lord Helmion, he declared, his tone dripping with contempt. And you, Soraya, have something I want. That power belongs to me. She lifted her chin, eyes blazing. It belongs to no one. You don't know the danger it poses. Helmion laughed, a hollow metallic echo. Don't you? It's the ultimate advantage, a gateway to absolute authority. Hand it over willingly, and maybe I'll let your little companions live. Aaron's stomach clenched. He'd encountered men like Helmion before, tyrants who saw the galaxy as a game board. He stepped forward, planting himself beside Soraya. You want her power, you'll have to go through us, he said, voice steadier than he felt. Helmion smirked. That can be arranged. He gestured to his troops. Take them. A firefight erupted. Laser bolts streaked across the courtyard, sizzling against old stone. Mark returned fire, but Helmion's men were well-trained, diving for cover. Rennick popped up from behind a collapsed pillar to squeeze off a few shots. more out of desperation than any real skill. Aaron exchanged quick blasts, forcing one soldier to retreat behind a statue. Soraya, adrenaline surging, tried to call upon the earth again. Vines sprouted from cracks, lashing out at Helmian's troops. Helmion himself sneered and pressed a switch on his gauntlet. A shrill pulse emitted, causing the vines to wither instantly. Soraya gasped, staggering as the energy backlash washed over her. He advanced, leveling his weapon. "You see," he taunted, "I came prepared for your botanical tricks. My technology replicates the destructive frequencies that disrupt your plant manipulation. You have nothing left." She trembled, but Aaron stepped forward. "She's not alone," he growled. "We still have something you can't disrupt." Without further explanation, he grasped Soraya's hand. That strange resonance from earlier flared in him again. He could feel the device at his waist buzzing faintly. With a concentrated effort, he tried to channel that synergy they'd harnessed. A wave of energy radiated from them, shimmering in the air. Helmian's smirk vanished as his own weapon faltered, flickering. Some of his troops shouted in alarm, their rifles sparking. The pulse that withered the vines began to short-circuit. Soraya, seizing the opening, directed the ground beneath the soldiers to quake. Cracks spread, and columns collapsed around them. They scrambled in confusion, firing wildly. Mark took advantage to pick them off with surgical blasts, a peculiar glee in its digital voice. Rennick mustered enough courage to pounce on a disoriented soldier, knocking the weapon free. Meanwhile, Helmion fought to maintain control of his specialized gauntlet, but the radiant aura from Soraya and Aaron's combined efforts muddled it. He snarled, stepping back. "You will regret this," he spat. "This planet will become your grave. My resources go far beyond these handful of men. I will personally tear this place apart to claim what is mine." His threat fell flat as Soraya strengthened the quake, forcing Helmion to lose footing. He stumbled, nearly pinned by a falling chunk of stone. With a final glare, he activated a portable teleporter. In a swirl of stuttering light, he vanished, leaving half his men behind. The mercenaries, seeing their leader gone, panicked. Some tried to flee, only to be immobilized by cracks in the ground or pinned by fresh vines. A few were knocked unconscious by flying debris. In a matter of moments, the temple courtyard fell silent except for the settling dust. Aaron let go of Soraya's hand, breathing hard. That union of energies had left him drained but exhilarated. Rennick emerged from cover, panting, a bruise forming on his jaw. "I have to say, this is a bit more than I bargained for," he wheezed. "Lord Helmion is not the type to just give up. He'll be back, with an army, possibly bigger guns." Soraya's expression was grim. "Yes, and each time, he will bring more technology to disrupt my powers. He will chase me, and any like me, until he harnesses the energy for his own ends." Mark warbled. "You folks have a habit of attracting trouble." Then it paused as if to process. "Well, boss, looks like you're back in the thick of things, just like old times." Aaron said nothing at first. He stared at the battered courtyard, the unconscious mercenaries, the collapsed walls. This was exactly the kind of conflict he'd tried to escape by coming to Terrell 6. Now, however, the stakes felt different, less about money or petty warlords, and more about preventing a universal threat. He turned to Soraya, noticing the fatigue etched in every line of her face. "How do we stop him?" he asked quietly. She gazed at the ancient carvings. "I suspect the only true way is for me to learn complete control of my power. And for that, I'll need you, my anchor. This device can help, but it's not fully functional. There may be more advanced versions or older archives that instruct how to unify the energy. We need to keep moving to find any remaining firstborn caches that might hold answers." Rennick shrugged helplessly. "And what if Helmion hunts you down across the galaxy?" Aaron clenched his jaw. "Then we'll have to face him on our terms. I'm tired of being chased. If it takes traveling from one dusty world to another to gather clues, then that's what we'll do." Soraya managed a tired smile. "Thank you," she whispered, voice trembling with earnest gratitude. "I know it's not easy, but I promise if we succeed, We can ensure no one else becomes a victim of this power. Yours, mine, or Helmian's twisted ambitions. Mark sighed in a mechanical rasp, picking through the wrecked gear of Helmian's men. We'll need to fortify ourselves along the way, it said, apparently excited by some new weapon it discovered. Perhaps new modifications, bigger firepower? Oh, or maybe better shield generators. Boss, come look at this battery cell. Rennick walked away, shaking his head as if he'd had enough. He muttered something about regrets, but also seemed oddly fascinated by the group. I guess I'm in this until we can fix the transport, he said. Might as well see what happens next. Maybe there's profit in it, or maybe just more bruises. The morning sun had risen high by then, casting strong light over the temple. Aaron joined Mark in rummaging for anything salvageable. He found a compact but powerful sidearm that once belonged to a mercenary. Checking the clip, he nodded in satisfaction. We'll need every advantage we can get. During a lull, Soraya wandered to a quiet corner of the temple. Aaron followed, watching her kneel beside a partially intact statue. It depicted a tall, robed figure holding a sphere in outstretched hands. The sphere had long since cracked, but faint patterns of green remained visible. This was a monument to the one who oversaw my binding, she said softly. I don't recall his face, but I sense regret, as if he never wanted to seal us away. Aaron placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. I'm sorry, he murmured, not sure what else to say. She reached up to touch his fingers. Your presence soothes the storm in me, she admitted. When you're close, it's easier not to slip into a destructive surge. He gave her hand a gentle squeeze. Let's hope it stays that way. They shared a moment of quiet connection. Then Mark's voice shattered it. Apologies for interrupting any potential heartfelt exchange, the droid called, but we've got wounded mercenaries stirring over here. Aaron and Soraya joined Mark by the largest pile of rubble, where two of Helmian's men were slowly regaining consciousness. Their weapons were destroyed. Aaron trained his new sidearm on them. Here's how it's going to work, he said coolly. We're leaving. You can crawl back to your employer, or you can rot here for all I care. But if Helmion shows up again, he'll get worse than what you just experienced. One man, bleeding from a gash on his forehead, swallowed hard. You don't know what Helmian's capable of. He'll bring in entire fleets. He has connections. You'll be running forever. Aaron's eyes hardened. That's our problem. Now, get out of my sight. He motioned them away. They stumbled off, probably hating him, but too shaken to argue. Soraya watched them go, a troubled look in her eyes. Violence, after centuries sealed away, I find myself surrounded by it again. Aaron gently took her hand. We'll try to do better, but sometimes there's no choice. They gathered the few supplies they had, including the partial power stabilizer device. Rennick's transport was still half broken, so Mark spent the next hour hastily effecting repairs. Eventually, the engine sputtered to life, though it sounded worse than before. It would be enough to get them moving. Before they departed, Soraya knelt at the center of the courtyard, laying her palm against the stone floor. She whispered a silent farewell or apology to the ancient structures that had once housed her people's knowledge. Then she rose, a determined gleam in her eye. I'm ready, she said simply. So they rode out of the temple fields, battered but resolved. The path ahead was uncertain, rife with potential battles and revelations, but also flickers of hope. If they could master the synergy between them, perhaps they could outmaneuver Helmion and prevent further devastation. Or perhaps they were doomed to wander from one conflict to the next. Aaron found that for the first time in many years, he felt a sense of purpose beyond survival. Protecting Soraya, and maybe helping her use her gift for something more than war, was a cause he could believe in. He felt the hum of the stabilizer device near his side, like a gentle reminder of the bond forming between them. They traveled until nightfall, eventually reaching a wide plateau offering a clear view of the starry sky. The hush of the desert lulled them into a rare calm. Mark powered down for a brief recharge. Rennick dozed in the driver's seat, a blaster on his lap. Aaron and Soraya stepped away, letting the night air wash over them. I wonder, Soraya said, voice soft in the starlight, what my people would think seeing me awaken now, traveling with a human, a droid, and an opportunistic merchant. We were once so advanced, sure of our path, yet we ended up sealing ourselves away. Aaron studied the infinite canvas of stars. Maybe they'd be proud that you're trying to use this power wisely. Or maybe they'd fear it. But you're here, and that matters more than what they would think. She smiled at him. We'll have to find them, my people. Or find what remains. There may be others like me. If we can gather enough knowledge, maybe we can fix the cycle of violence. Maybe we can prevent Helmion from turning this power into a cosmic weapon. He nodded, letting his shoulder brush against hers. Wherever that leads us, he said, we'll face it together. She opened her mouth to say something, but was interrupted by the soft hum in the device. Aaron felt a slight rush of that same resonance through his chest. Soraya's eyes flickered, and she looked at him with a new curiosity. He could almost sense the unspoken question. How deep did this connection run? Did it only revolve around controlling the power, or was there more to it? In lieu of words, he gently placed a hand on her cheek. Her breath caught. For an instant, he wondered if he was crossing a line, but she leaned into his touch, her eyes sliding shut. The energy between them felt charged, not only with cosmic might, but with the beginnings of genuine affection. After so many years locked in a trunk, so many centuries without simple human contact, Soraya must have felt starved for warmth. And after so many years of war and solitude, so did he. They remained like that for a moment beneath the alien sky, two improbable souls bound together by an ancient power and a shared determination not to let that power destroy them. Then Soraya let out a quiet laugh, more relief than mirth. I didn't think waking up would lead to this. Aaron managed a brief chuckle. I didn't think I'd ever have a cause worth fighting for again. A breeze swirled around them, carrying dust and echoes of the day's battles away into the darkness. For better or worse, their journey had begun, and the path ahead was certain to challenge them at every turn. They would have to outrun or outfight Helmion, unravel the mysteries of the Firstborn, and ensure Soraya remained herself despite the vast energy that threatened to overwhelm her. But at least on this silent night with the stars as witness, neither of them stood alone. They walked back to the battered transport, where Mark chirped a greeting in half-powered mode. Rennick snored softly in the pilot's seat. Aaron offered Soraya a place to rest in the back among the crates, ensuring she had a blanket. He found a seat on the edge, rifle cradled in his arms in case trouble found them again. For a long time, he watched the horizon, images of looming starships and savage mercenaries swirling in his imagination. Yet every time doubt stabbed at him, he remembered the calm in Soraya's eyes when their energies aligned. He dozed in fits, waking every so often to scan the dark horizon. The last time he roused, he saw Soraya gazing at him, her expression gentle. She mouthed the words, "Thank you," and settled back under the blanket. He realized with a faint pang that the anchor he provided for her was not just a magical synergy, but also the anchor of simple companionship. War, entrapment, centuries of being alone. None of that could be undone easily, but at least she wouldn't face the future without an ally. By morning, they would head out once more, searching for another rumored ruin or repository that might grant them a clue about strengthening the anchor bond. They might stumble onto further leads about the scattered vessels. And inevitably, Helmion would loom over their every move, not to mention lesser bounty hunters drawn by gossip of an awakened firstborn power. But these were troubles for tomorrow. For now, all Aaron could do was breathe the cool desert air and keep his vigil, rifle in hand, listening to Soraya's quiet breathing and Mark's digital hum. Oddly, in that uncertain moment, with a half-broken transport and an exhausted, motley crew, he felt something close to peace. Such was the beginning of a story that would stretch far beyond the arid wastes of Terral 6, weaving through half-forgotten star systems and ancient cosmic secrets. Soraya, once fused to a primeval tree, had been awakened by a man who never intended to be a hero, but found himself stepping into a role he couldn't refuse. Their bond, forged by chance, would become a beacon of hope or a catalyst for doom, depending on how well they could tame the forces that stirred within her. And though neither of them knew exactly where they were headed, they were sure of one thing. An ancient promise now crackled between them, something that refused to be sealed away again. They would awaken it fully on their own terms, shaping it, if they could, into a power that saved worlds rather than destroyed them.